Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. High in the remote Sierra foothills, silence reigned until a single lavender-scented letter shattered everything. What began as a polite request to share a private pool spiraled into trespass, lies, and a legal war. She thought it was community spirit. He called it invasion. And he was ready. There's something sacred about silence in the mountains. Out here, 12 acres up in the Sierra foothills, the only thing that breaks the quiet is the wind cutting through pine, maybe a hawk overhead, or the sound of water lapping gently in my newly finished pool. After 15 years of corporate security work in oil fields halfway across the world, I'd earned this. A damn fortress of solitude. No HOA. No neighbors peeking over fences. No passive-aggressive newsletter shaming me for leaving my trash bins out. Just space, sky, and the kind of peace you can only buy by walking away from civilization. So when I got the letter, I already felt the old instincts stirring. It was handwritten cream-colored stationery with a faint lavender scent. Tidy cursive, formal tone. Dear Mr. Hart, it began. As a proud member of the Whispering Oaks Homeowners Association and a neighbor in our beautiful mountain community, I'd love to propose a conversation regarding shared use of your scenic pool for occasional private gatherings. I stopped reading right there. A pool conversation from someone I didn't know? My pool wasn't part of any community. It wasn't on any map that said amenity. It was behind a locked gate, 6-foot fence, no trespassing signs posted in triplicate. And the only thing it was supposed to host was me, a cold beer, and occasionally a coyote giving me the stink eye from the tree line. Still, I called the number at the bottom. I'm a man of fairness. Maybe it was just some poor old retiree who wanted to swim laps at dawn or some PTA mom looking to host a baby shower. I figured I'd listen, say no politely, and get on with my life. But the voice on the other end wasn't looking for permission. It was Karen. Brandon, I'm so pleased you called. You have no idea how relieved we are to have someone responsible in the neighborhood. The previous owners were such recluses. But your place, gorgeous. And that pool, oh my lord, it's practically a community centerpiece. We thought perhaps just an occasional evening. Nothing big, little champagne, just the ladies from the HOA board. I'm going to stop you there. I said, that pool is on private land. I'm not part of any HOA. There is no shared use. Ever. There was a pause. Then came the sugary tone with a sharp edge tucked underneath. Well, that's disappointing. We did think you might be a little more community-minded. I am, I replied. That community is me, my land, and my golden retriever. Best of luck. I hung up before she could weaponize the phrase, we'll be in touch. That night, I went down to the pool and double-checked the gate, cameras, and the solar motion lights. Not that I thought she'd do anything. People like Karen don't break rules. They redefine them. They twist bylaws until they can justify walking their Shih Tzu across your living room rug. But something felt off. That call wasn't a request. It was a declaration. The kind where someone's already ordered the party supplies and just wants to tell you where to park. The next morning, I added a second camera pointed at the back trail that bordered Whispering Oaks. Then I sat down with a black coffee and drafted a certified letter restating that my property was not part of the HOA, that any unauthorized access would be considered trespassing, and that this was my one and only written warning. I dropped it in the mail and figured I was done. But you don't stop a Karen with paperwork. You just give her something new to ignore. I was halfway through a trip into town when my phone buzzed. Push notification. Motion detected. Pool zone. At first, I figured it was a deer or a coyote. Happens sometimes, especially around sunset. But it was noon. And the thumbnail preview. Well, it wasn't wildlife. It was people. A lot of them. I pulled over at the gas station on Pine Ridge Road, tapped the feed, and watched in disbelief as at least 20 folks wandered across my backyard like it was Club Med. Loud music echoed from someone's Bluetooth speaker. Lawn chairs had been dragged around. One guy in cargo shorts was inflating a pool float. A couple of women in bikinis were pouring drinks under the pergola. And at the center of it all, white sundress, sunglasses, flute of champagne, was Karen. Laughing, waving. I stared at the screen, jaw clenched so tight I nearly cracked a molar. They'd climbed over the fence. The camera on the southern gate showed it all. 2 guys hoisting a cooler, one woman practically slipping out of her heels while stepping over the top rail. Someone had disabled the contact sensor on the gate, probably yanked out the battery. I had cameras on that too. They didn't even try to hide it. They thought they were untouchable. I checked the second feed. They'd dragged my patio furniture into weird groupings, moved the grill like it was theirs. One kid, couldn't have been older than 17, was cannonballing into the pool, like he owned it. I caught a glimpse of Karen raising a glass like she was leading a toast at her daughter's wedding. I didn't bother calling. I didn't send a text. I drove. 25 minutes of pure adrenaline-fueled silence. I took the back way up Ridgeview Pass, parked halfway down the slope behind my property, and slipped through the lower trail. I wasn't in uniform, but the muscle memory from years in security was still there. Boots silent on gravel, eyes scanning everything. I wore a light camo jacket and had my Mossberg 590 slung over my back, not brandished, not raised, but visible. My permit covered that. It was legal, just like the land I was about to walk onto. The music hit me first as I crept closer, some remixed pop garbage rattling the trees. Then voices, laughter, ice clinking in glasses. I came around the hedge and stepped onto the stone path. I must have looked like something out of a bad action movie. Everything stopped. Music cut. Drinks paused mid-air. A girl screamed. One guy actually dropped his phone into the pool. Karen's head turned. She blinked, mouth open. Then, theatrical as hell, she screamed, "He's got a gun! He's insane!" I didn't raise my voice, didn't point the weapon. I just stood still, the sun glinting off the barrel, and said, "This is private property. I live here. You don't. You have 5 minutes to get off my land before I call the police and press charges for trespassing and theft." And yes, water's property too. It was like Moses parting the Red Sea. Instant scramble, towels flying, people tripping over chairs. Some barefoot woman grabbed a flamingo float and bolted like she was escaping a hostage situation. I heard keys jangling, someone yelling about a kid still in the house. One guy dropped a bottle of Prosecco. The pool deck turned into a chaotic stampede. Karen tried to maintain some illusion of control, barking orders like a cruise director gone rogue. But even she cracked when one of the cameras chirped with motion alert again. She left behind a Bluetooth speaker, her sunglasses, and both high heels. Once the dust settled, I stood there alone. Broken glasses, half-empty cups, wet footprints on the stone, and one limp pool noodle left behind like a casualty of war. I went inside, downloaded the footage, and poured myself a bourbon. Some people call this paranoia. I call it preparation. The thing about people like Karen, they never think they're the villain. No, they're concerned citizens, pillars of the community, just doing what's best for everyone but you. So I wasn't shocked when, less than 24 hours after the trespass fiasco, I opened my gate to a process server holding a manila envelope like it was radioactive. Guy barely made eye contact, handed it over, muttered something about official notice, and was gone before I could even ask who hired him. Inside, a civil suit, filed by the Whispering Oaks Homeowners Association and personally endorsed by Karen T. Travis, president. Allegations: reckless endangerment with a firearm, criminal threat, emotional distress caused to a minor, the cannonball kid naturally, disproportionate and traumatizing response to a social misunderstanding. They'd spun it all. Claimed I brandished a weapon at unarmed guests and threatened lethal force over an honest confusion about shared amenities. The cherry on top, a claim that multiple guests assumed the property was part of the HOA's expanded recreational zone. Expanded recreational zone? What the hell was that supposed to mean? My 12 acres weren't in their jurisdiction, never had been. But reading the language, I could see the trap. They were positioning this like I was the unstable loner, the off-grid weirdo with a bunker mentality. Karen's genius was in preying on perception, suburban fears, gun owner paranoia, HOA virtue signaling. I called my lawyer, Harry McMillan, ex-DA, now specializing in land disputes and HOA litigation. His first words after reading the complaint, "Oh, they really think you're bluffing." I wasn't. We got to work immediately. Pulled every second of footage from the security system, multiple angles, full audio, time-stamped. Every climb over the fence, every popped cork, every wet footprint on stone tiles. We documented property damage. 2 deck chairs broken, sprinkler head ripped out, a crack in the pool skimmer cover. Petty stuff, maybe. But legally, it added up. Karen had no idea what she'd walked into. This wasn't a neighborly dispute. This was a tactical engagement. And I'd dealt with worse in Yemen without a translator. Harry sent a cease and desist letter to HOA counsel and informed them that a countersuit was already in draft. We also prepped public statements in case Karen decided to take her sob story to local press or one of those ridiculous neighborhood Facebook groups. I knew her type. She'd try to control the narrative before facts could catch up. That evening, I reviewed the security footage again. I wanted to make sure we hadn't missed anything. And that's when I heard it. One of the front yard cameras, low-res audio, but clear enough. Two men standing by their work truck, early arrivals to the party. Karen walking past them, balancing a tray of glasses, saying, bright and breezy, "Don't worry, it's all handled. He's never here on weekends. Pool's ours today." Ours. She never asked. She assumed. She declared. She weaponized community. We clipped that segment, cleaned up the audio, and added it to the archive. Now we had motive, intent, and proof of prior knowledge. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate invasion. As the sun set, I sat on my porch, watching the camera feeds cycle through their infrared pattern. Stillness returned, but I could feel the current shifting. They thought they could scare me with a lawsuit. They forgot I do my best thinking under pressure. The thing about fighting a lawsuit is that the courtroom's only half the battle. The other half, the court of public opinion. And Karen had already fired the first shot. A neighbor texted me a link to a post in the Whispering Oaks community Facebook group. The headline read, "Armed confrontation at community pool, teen traumatized." The comments were worse. "I heard he keeps weapons in every room." It was just a misunderstanding, but he acted like a maniac. We need to protect our kids from unstable individuals. Of course, I wasn't in the group. I wasn't a member of their HOA, and thank God for that. But screenshots flowed in from friends, contractors, and even a real estate agent I knew from town. Karen was running a smear campaign, so I made a decision. I posted my own version of the story, not on Facebook. That place was her turf. I uploaded the full unedited security footage to YouTube and Reddit. No commentary, no edits. Just raw video of people breaking in, drinking, partying, and scattering when confronted. I titled it, "Private Property Party Crashers, What Would You Do?" Within hours, it took off. The comments flipped the narrative. This dude's a legend. That lady in the white dress straight up trespassed and lied about it. They're lucky he was calm. I wasn't looking for fame, but I wasn't about to let Karen spin the story uncontested. Not when my name was being dragged through the dirt. Meanwhile, Harry and I dug deeper. We needed more than just video. We needed voices, witnesses, confirmation that this wasn't just a fluke, but a coordinated intrusion. That's when a landscaping foreman named Javier came forward. He and his crew had been working 2 lots over when they saw Karen and her guests hauling coolers and party gear toward my fence. Javier overheard her say, "Clear as day. I told you, don't worry about it. He won't be back till late. We'll be gone before he notices." Harry got his statement notarized. Gold. Then there was Emily, the neighbor across the ridge. Retired nurse. Quiet. Never involved in drama. She emailed me a note. "Just so you know, Karen told me a few weeks ago that she was working on getting us access to that pool. I thought she meant she was asking you politely. I didn't realize she was planning something else." We interviewed her and added her words to the file. Her delivery was gentle, but the impact? Devastating. Karen had created an illusion of negotiation to justify the invasion. That made everything premeditated. With witnesses and video, Harry felt confident, but we weren't stopping there. We requested a copy of the Whispering Oaks HOA bylaws through public channels. Turns out, even within their own community, any event involving over 15 people and alcohol required written board approval and liability insurance. Karen's party, no permits, no insurance, no approval, and she knew it. We started compiling the second legal front, our countersuit: trespassing, property damage, defamation, and violations of public safety codes. Each claim reinforced by hard evidence. Karen had overplayed her hand. She thought she could spin this as a minor misunderstanding, cast me as the paranoid gun nut in the woods, but instead, she'd triggered a full-scale legal response. And now the internet was on my side. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Not while there were still papers to file and enemies convinced they were in the right. But that night, as the temperature dropped and the mountain air grew sharp, I poured another bourbon, pulled up the footage again, and watched Karen's little empire start to crack. They came for my pool. Now I was coming for everything else. The courthouse in Mariposa County looks like it belongs in a Western movie. 2 stories, sandstone brick, an American flag flapping lazily in the mountain breeze. But inside, it's all fluorescent lighting and worn carpet, the same stale bureaucracy as anywhere else. It was our first formal hearing. Karen had arrived early, flanked by 2 HOA board members and a smirking attorney in a navy blue suit who looked like he hadn't lost a case since puberty. I sat with Harry at the defense table, calm on the outside, coiled tight underneath. This was where the narrative would finally hit the wall of facts. The plaintiff's side led with emotion. A woman in a lavender blouse, mother of the teen who'd cannonballed into my pool, testified that her son was deeply shaken and couldn't sleep for days after seeing me with a firearm. Karen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue like she was at a funeral. The attorney leaned into the language. Trauma, lethal intimidation, pattern of hostility. Then came Karen's testimony. She called the incident a miscommunication gone horribly wrong, claimed she truly believed the pool was part of the HOA's extended amenities, said she tried to contact me multiple times to formalize usage rights, but I was uncooperative and hostile. Harry didn't flinch. When it was our turn, he stood like a man presenting a murder weapon. He loaded the USB drive into the courtroom monitor and pressed play. What followed was 10 uninterrupted minutes of hell for Karen, her guests scaling the fence, moving my furniture, dragging coolers, popping corks, tossing towels. One guy peed in the bushes, Karen laughing, leading a toast, making herself at home. And then the kicker, the clip of her saying, "Pool's ours today. He's never here on weekends." When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Even the clerk stopped typing. Harry turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the defense asserts that the plaintiffs knowingly trespassed, tampered with private security equipment, and engaged in unauthorized group activity involving alcohol, all on clearly marked private property. The defendant's response was proportionate, legal, and necessary to halt an escalating violation." The judge asked for copies of the footage and supporting affidavits. We handed over the notarized statements from Javier and Emily. It was all there. Motive, action, consequence. Karen's lawyer tried to recover, arguing that the footage didn't show me not pointing the shotgun. The judge shut it down. "Speculation doesn't override hard evidence, counselor." Then came the judge's provisional ruling. Not a full dismissal, but close. He found no immediate grounds to pursue the charges of criminal threat or reckless endangerment. He declined to issue any restraining order, and while he allowed Karen's civil claim to technically proceed, he advised both parties to consider mediation to avoid further embarrassment. Karen's face curdled like milk. As we left the courtroom, one of the HOA board members peeled off from her like a rat leaving a sinking ship. He caught up to us in the hallway. "Just so you know," he said quietly, "not everyone on the board agreed with what she did. Some of us warned her. She didn't care." Harry nodded. "That'll be useful. Real useful." Back in the truck, I finally exhaled. It wasn't over. Not yet. But we'd drawn first blood. Karen had walked into court thinking she was the victim. Now she knew she'd just become Exhibit A. By now, Karen had realized her civil suit was a sinking ship, but she was still clinging to the wheel like a captain who couldn't read a weather report. And I wasn't about to wait around for her next move. Harry and I launched the counteroffensive. We filed our own lawsuit, trespassing, property damage, defamation, and violation of privacy, not just against Karen personally, but also against the Whispering Oaks HOA as a corporate entity. The logic was simple. They enabled her. They let her act as their representative, and some of their funds had been used for legal correspondence with me. That made them just as liable, but that was just the start. We sent official complaints to the county fire marshal and the California Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. See, hosting a party with over 15 guests and open alcohol requires permits, even on private HOA grounds. And Karen's little champagne circus wasn't even on their land. It was on mine. The fire marshal started sniffing around. They found no fire exits at their community clubhouse, expired extinguishers, and 0 evacuation plans for events. Then the tax board got wind of a series of undocumented community fundraisers Karen had run in the past year. Cash only. No records, no tax filings. It was like pulling a thread on a cheap sweater. One by one, her defenses unraveled. Local whispers turned into real outrage. HOA members who had previously played it safe started asking questions. One older couple, the Petersons, even stood up during a board meeting and demanded an audit of all HOA event expenses. When Karen tried to gavel them down, someone else shouted, "You're not Queen of the Mountain." By the time the next meeting came around, Karen had been quietly removed as president. Official statement: stepping aside for personal reasons. Unofficially, she was forced out, replaced by a younger, no-nonsense woman named Tasha McGill, a former Navy logistics officer with zero tolerance for bullshit. Tasha called me personally within the week. "Mr. Hart," she said, voice flat, "I've reviewed everything. On behalf of the HOA, I want to make something clear. We're not backing Karen. She acted outside her authority, and we're taking steps to prevent this from ever happening again." I appreciated it. Didn't mean I was dropping the countersuit. Harry was already preparing depositions. Meanwhile, Karen's silence turned from smug to seething. She no longer strutted around the neighborhood. Her backyard, once the site of wine-soaked gatherings, was quiet. Curtains drawn, lights off early, but I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because even when the queen falls, her pawns don't always know when to quit. And Karen, she wasn't done playing. You'd think getting dethroned would slow Karen down. Instead, she got desperate. 3 days after she was removed as HOA president, I got another visit from a deputy, this time with a new complaint. Karen had filed a personal civil claim against me, separate from the HOA. Disturbance of the peace, menacing behavior, and unlawful intimidation. No lawyer attached. She was going solo. Harry laughed when he read the filing. She's going rogue. That means she's panicking. And it showed. She claimed I'd patrolled the perimeter of her property at night, completely false, and that I'd used my military-grade surveillance system to spy on her family. Family. She didn't have kids, unless she'd adopted that inflatable flamingo she left behind. We filed a motion to dismiss, but the sheer audacity of the claim meant one thing. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to wear me down. Paper cuts, one after another. Maybe she thought I'd settle or back off or move. She underestimated how much I hate bullies. Then came an unexpected break. Emily, the neighbor who had already testified, sent me a recording. It was from a phone conversation with Karen 2 weeks prior. Karen had been venting, careless. You could hear her say clearly, "He thinks he's untouchable. All I need is one judge with a soft spot for community safety, and I'll bury him in hearings." That sentence was worth more than gold. It was intent, malice, abuse of process. Harry submitted the recording to the court with a supplemental brief. The judge flagged Karen's new claim as potentially retaliatory. Even better, remember that HOA board member who pulled me aside after the first hearing? He reached out again. Turned out Karen had tried to pressure the new president into issuing a public statement accusing me of systemic aggression. Tasha refused, but we got emails. Karen had sent them from her personal account. Blunt, arrogant, traceable. It was a pattern. Manipulation, escalation, projection. When the next hearing arrived, Karen sat alone. No lawyer, no HOA support, just her and a trembling stack of loose paper. She still believed she could win by speaking louder. But this time, no one was listening. The final hearing wasn't marked on any calendar in red ink, but it may as well have been. By then, the courtroom had become familiar territory. Same bailiff, same judge, same worn-out chairs with springs that groaned like guilty consciences. Karen came alone again, this time in a somber gray dress, her hair pinned tighter than usual. No clipboard, no HOA entourage, just a yellow folder hugged to her chest like a life raft. Harry and I had everything prepped, every video clip cued and time-stamped, every affidavit signed and sealed. Every motion Karen had filed, annotated with her contradictions. Our countersuit was center stage now, and we were ready to drag her through every inch of the wreckage she'd caused. The judge opened with a weary sigh. "Let's get to it, shall we?" We started with the trespassing claim. Harry showed the footage, Karen leading guests over the fence, directing setup like a party planner with delusions of nobility. We paused the video when she said, "Pool's ours today." The judge stared at her. Karen looked down. Then came Emily's statement, reaffirmed in person. She testified that Karen had boasted for weeks about resolving access to the pool and implied that I'd given tacit approval. When pressed, Emily said Karen even mentioned testing boundaries. Javier took the stand next. He spoke plainly. Heard Karen say I was out of town. Heard her say we'd never notice. saw them unload cases of wine and beer. The judge nodded slowly. Then came the kicker, the audio file. Harry played the clip, Karen's voice sharp and careless. "All I need is one judge with a soft spot for community safety, and I'll bury him in hearings." The courtroom went cold. Even Karen's breathing shifted, short, panicked inhales through her nose. "Do you deny this is your voice, Ms. Travis?" the judge asked. Silence. When she finally answered, it was a whisper. "I don't recall." That didn't help. Harry moved on to property damage. We submitted itemized estimates. 2 cracked chairs, a ripped cover, a broken filter valve. Nothing dramatic, but legally binding. Then defamation, copies of Facebook posts, messages, witness accounts. Several residents submitted letters describing Karen's statements as intentionally misleading and deliberately inflammatory. Then came the regulatory fallout. We submitted letters from the fire marshal and alcoholic beverage control confirming violations. No permits, expired safety systems, unauthorized events. The HOA had already been fined. And though they'd ousted Karen, she was the one who signed the vendor forms. By the time Harry rested our case, Karen looked like she'd aged a decade. She asked to speak. Permission granted. She stood shakily, voice trembling as she tried to explain that she meant well, that she thought she was creating community, that the lines between private and public space were not always clear. The judge let her talk for about 60 seconds. Then he raised a hand. "Ms. Travis, I've reviewed hours of video, dozens of pages of statements, and listened to your own voice describe a plan to misuse the court system. Your actions were not just misguided. They were manipulative, vindictive, and unlawful." Then the gavel dropped once, clean and final. Ruling. In favor of the defendant on all counts. HOA to pay $62,000 in damages. Karen Travis personally ordered to issue a formal apology and restricted from coming within 300 yards of my property for a minimum of 5 years. Court adjourned. I didn't smile, didn't clap, just stood up and walked out while Karen sank back into her chair like her bones had liquefied. Outside, I looked up at the ridgeline. Storm clouds were rolling in, the kind you could see from miles away, the kind that didn't care who used to be queen of the hill. In the weeks after the ruling, the mountain finally felt quiet again. Not just audibly, though the late-night shouting matches and Karen's god-awful playlist had mercifully vanished, but spiritually, the land breathed easier, and so did I. But victory has a strange aftertaste. It's not sweet, it's metallic, sharp. Like blood on the lip after a fistfight you didn't start but damn sure finished. First order of business, new perimeter upgrades. I wasn't about to let history repeat itself. I had a local crew install an automatic gate at the bottom trail, full biometric entry, thumbprint, retinal scan, the works. Expensive, sure, but so was letting entitled lunatics believe they could picnic on my porch. Right under the camera, I mounted a custom metal sign, burnished black, engraved in chrome letters. "Welcome to my resort. Trespassers get a free tour of the muzzle brake." I didn't expect anyone to laugh. I expected them to remember. The neighborhood changed too. The HOA went quiet. Real quiet. No more newsletters talking about shared values or regional beautification initiatives. No more Karen sightings either. Word was she'd put her place up for sale. Personal reasons, the listing said. Probably couldn't bear to look uphill at the house that nuked her little empire. One morning, I found an envelope tucked under my gate. Inside was a handwritten note. Simple, anonymous. "Thanks for standing your ground. We were all too scared. You weren't." I didn't need to know who sent it. Then came the contractor. I was cleaning the filter system when a guy in a paint-splattered hoodie walked up from the dirt path. Introduced himself, said he used to work events for the HOA. Had run catering and setup for a few of Karen's ladies' luncheons. We made small talk. He looked around like he was checking for eavesdroppers. Then he dropped it. "She used to offer side deals," he said. "Private parties at HOA properties, cash only, off the books, sometimes late-night events. Told us not to report numbers, no permits, no IDs. He didn't have proof. But he wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, I heard similar murmurs. A DJ who once played a rooftop party, a bartender stiffed on payment, even a florist who got threatened when she asked for a receipt. Karen had run her little HOA fiefdom like a mafia boss with a wine club. I forwarded everything to Tasha McGill, the new HOA president. She didn't reply with pleasantries, Just, we're investigating. No need for small talk. That's how professionals work. One afternoon, while walking down to the mailbox, I saw a kid standing awkwardly at the edge of the fence line. Skinny, about 17. Shuffled his feet when I got close. Finally looked up. I was here. That day. With the party, he said. Karen said it was her property, that it was rented or something. I didn't know. I swear. I looked at him deadpan. You climbed a fence with barbed wire. He flushed. I know. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For real. It wasn't right. I nodded once. Thanks. He turned to leave, but paused. She used us, he said. Used everyone. Yeah, she did. And some of them were still waking up to that. 6 months later, the land is quieter than ever. Not silent. Alive. But calm. The coyotes still call at night. Hawks still circle overhead. But there's a weight that's lifted. Something invisible but real. Like the boundary lines finally mean something again. Not just on paper, but in people's minds. The pool sits crystal clear, flanked by freshly sealed stonework and new LED security floods that kick on the second a squirrel sneezes near the fence. Overkill? Maybe. But it's mine. That's the whole damn point. The automatic gate at the bottom of the trail is still a marvel. Built like a bunker door, smooth hydraulic slide, panel backlit in ice blue. Visitors get a message before it opens. Private property, entry by invitation only, and that's how it stays. Tasha McGill and I had coffee once since all this ended. Neutral ground, a diner in town, just the two of us. She was crisp, straight-backed, hands folded like she was still in uniform. She apologized again on behalf of the HOA, said they'd completed their audit, found serious irregularities, thousands unaccounted for, dozens of undocumented events, a pattern of fabricated receipts. The board voted to liquidate the clubhouse and adjacent parcel to pay off debts, legal fees, and, of course, my settlement. Whispering Oaks was officially restructured with new leadership and mandatory transparency reforms. Karen never showed up for the apology letter she was ordered to deliver in person. Instead, I received a typed page, unsigned, mailed from a P.O. box in Sacramento. No return address. It read simply, "What you did wasn't right, but you won. So enjoy it." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was pure Karen. Even in defeat, she couldn't help but be smug and wrong at the same time. Rumor has it she's now living in a gated community outside San Diego, someplace with strict rules and weekly board meetings. I imagine she's back to passing notes about hedge heights and unauthorized patio furniture. She never wanted freedom, she wanted control. The two are not the same. And me, I added 2 new cameras. Not because I expect more trouble, but because, well, history. And I started writing. Not blogs, not manifestos, just thoughts. About property, about the illusion of safety, about how people confuse shared values with entitlement. I've had folks reach out, other landowners, other former victims of HOA overreach. Turns out my story wasn't unique, just unusually loud. Sometimes that's what it takes. I don't see neighbors much anymore. A few wave from their cars. A few avoid eye contact. But one thing's clear, no one climbs fences anymore. And that, my friend, is peace. The real kind. The kind you don't get from playing nice. The kind you earn.